One of the themes that has come up very often on the show is giving back to the community. Hi, I'm Malak Fuad, and welcome to a new segment of the show that we're calling Double Take, where I connect some of the dots between alumni guests that I've spoken to. I've shared a few times that shedding a positive light on the region has become an important byproduct of the show. So today I wanted to highlight two guests who instantly come to mind when talking about giving back. The incredible heart surgeon, Sir Magdi Yacoub.
You're not treating patients, desolate patients, you're treating communities.
And Meta's regional director, Akkad.
A 15-year-old girl I was talking to, she's like, look, as refugees, we don't want pity. We just want a chance.
When I sat down with Feris in late 2023, he had just come back from the world's largest camp for Syrian refugees.
I just flew in this morning, actually, from the Za'atari Refugee Camp. And there's nothing more raw than some of the stories I heard of people who left with nothing, walked 15 kilometers across the border and arrived in a empty patch of desert, effectively, and had to rebuild. And nothing introduces you to yourself like that. We always give away iftars, we give away meals, and it feels like more like Band-Aids. And one of the things we decided to do this year was, in addition to doing some of the more typical stuff, is to say, why don't we launch a digital literacy program? Like, one of the main complaints that we heard from people in the camp is their lack of access to opportunity. A statement that stood with me from a 15-year-old girl I was talking to. She's like, look, as refugees, we don't want pity. We're not looking for charity. We just want a chance. And we want a chance, and we want to be able to prove that we have this opportunity. What struck me, and we've been doing work with refugees now for a while, is what's painful and refreshing. At the surface, it's refreshing, but also when you scratch the surface a little bit, it's painful, is that it's not something that happens to others. It's something that can happen to anybody. And so they're just normal people with the same aspirations, same hopes.
Yeah. We forget that. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was talking to this 50-year-old girl, and she's like, yeah, I follow BTS, and I have a crush on this star, and I am on social media, and we took a bunch of influencers, and they follow them, and even the influencers were ashamed to say, oh, we didn't realize that they follow our content. Like, why wouldn't they? 55% of the camp are under 18. A third of the households are led by women. So yes, there are some nuances, but for the most part, the aspirations and what they're looking forward to do in life is no less than any of us. And I think we have to do our part, but treat them with enough dignity to give them that opportunity.
It really is fascinating what you're saying. Is it the first year that you do this as a corporation?
It's the first time I personally go to the Za'atari camp. We've done stuff with refugees in the past. During COVID, all nations went extremely inwards. So these edge situations went into the backdrop. So even on the case, I was looking after news on Facebook prior to taking on this role for all growth market or developing markets. And one thing we noticed is there was a blind spot for news coverage on refugee camps. So, different news outlets started covering internally, very local type of news, and nobody was doing that coverage. And so we launched an incentive program to work with local refugees to provide coverage on the COVID situation in these refugee camps. What is the vaccination situation? Are they getting the right kind of healthcare advice? We also work with the World Health Organization to provide some of these insights and that support. And I think it's very easy to forget about these individuals. And one of the reasons why I wanted to go, and I posted about it today, is to say, look, not only when the news cycle is hot on it, because at one point they would have like surplus of what people thought they needed, which is like food and blankets, and but I mean, nobody had the emotional endurance to say, look,
to keep going with it.
They've been there now for 10 years, a decade. Most of the kids I've met don't remember where they came from. They're born there. This is their reality. And it's complicated and probably will be complicated for a while. So let's act accordingly. Let's give them the opportunities and meet them where they're at.
It's hard sometimes to think about the difference we can make, but it's stories and conversation like these that remind me that not only are they amazing people doing amazing work, to uplift the region, but there are things each one of us can do to really help. Speaking of individual efforts that can move mountains, no one fits that description better than Sir Magdi Yacoub. Professor Magdi Yacoub, of course, is no stranger to people. He's had a very distinguished career as a cardiothoracic surgeon. But today, the legacy Professor Yacoub is leaving behind is far greater than his groundbreaking surgeries. He established his charity, Chain of Hope, in 1995 when he realized that he wanted to build long-term impact on the lives of the children beyond charitable missions.
Going on missions for very short times is very useful to pointing out the need and how things can be done. But in the longer term, Aldo Castaneda, who was one of my idols, used to say it is surgical tourism, but it does serve something. The important thing is to have something sustainable for the future, which will continue a long time after we have gone.
I know that Chain of Hope, when it started, you and your team of volunteer doctors would travel to the Caribbean and to various other places underdeveloped to provide know-how in conducting operations. And I find it interesting that with experience now, you are realizing that having a solid base is more sustainable. Um, but are you still conducting those missions as well, or is it now more focused on hospitals?
We're still conducting missions and helping groups, and that's really important to point out to the local population, as well as in the UK and the US, the need because by doing something which could not have been done and the children would have died, and we ensure that a team will remain there until the last child has gone home, and importantly, follow them through. Follow up is mandatory. Uh, that's really essential because if you don't do it, people in that country forget that there is a need, and they say, "Oh, we accept it. Children do die." I don't think children just do die from no obvious reason, but you point out, no, these children do not deserve to die, and we can save a few. And then you have to start helping us and building a sustainable system here. And that the same happens in the UK and the US when say, oh my God, look at these children, deserving children, how they have improved, and we love them, and we go and see them, and so it is essential to continue to do that on a selective basis to point out that there is a need and to identify people who are called stakeholders for the future who will be useful in the sustainable system. So it is
So,
something which is still necessary as
yeah.
we speak.
And Aswan, of course, is the first of these model hospitals, which was built in 2009, which is an incredible institution. And I think this has now formed the basis for your other two hospitals that you're working on. You're working on a very large one in Cairo, and you're working on another very large one in Rwanda, both expected to open next year. Tell me a little bit about what you learned from the Aswan hospital. What are you doing differently in the two others, and what do you hope to keep going with these?
I've learned a lot from Aswan. The first is to empower the local people. So now we have gifted young people, both in the cardiology, cardiac surgery, and the research labs, my God, publishing in top journals, Nature and things, as and they are doing it all. And I watch them with admiration. And they do 95% of the work. And that is fantastic. The second lesson is to have a system. And Dr. Has been instrumental in helping us of having a system for the hospital being have a lot of administration keep up all the notes and everything. We were doing it, but we had to invest more and more in accountability, in transparency, in having a system where everything can be traced and you know where every penny went. That's fantastic and has served the purpose in a big way because you find out, for example, that 95% of all the money which is from the donors is being used with the patient. And we have, again, through these systems, we have the so called cost effectiveness. And so a complex operation like a repairing of a transposition of the great arteries or complex aneurysm of the aorta costs us like $8,000 to $10,000 or pounds. That is like 1/10 of what it costs in the UK or the US. So this has been very, very important lesson we are uh, applying to the other centers. And the final lessons which we have learned is the observation is that we look at the community as a whole. And that's again something which Aldo Castaneda did in Boston when he was talking about don't ask me about what happens in Boston children. Ask me about what happens in the registry congenital heart program, New England congenital heart program, because a baby born with transposition in this area, his chances of survival at that time was only 10%. If he went to the hospital, yes, became 90 or 95%. He says, I am responsible for the death outside the hospital. So that's very important. And we learned that in Aswan as well, that we are responsible for the community. And we see, my God, how the parents come in sorry state carrying a child who is very sick, and the whole community is sad. And you treat the one child, and the community is revived almost. The father and the people are go back to work, rejoicing in one incident. So that's a very big lesson that you're not treating patients, desolate patients, you're treating communities which are really suffering a lot of pain due to heart disease. So that's a big lesson which we are applying
It is
in
a big lesson.
Cairo and as well in Kigali, especially.
What made you choose Rwanda as the base for the center, as opposed to another country?
There was several, not only one reason. The first reason is we all felt sorry and partially responsible for the genocide which happened in Rwanda and Burundi, because none of us interfered, and this is a massive crime of omission, and 2 million people were killed in few weeks. So that is a sense of guilt from our communities for not preventing this massacre. The second, of course, is that there is nothing there. And the third is that it is the element of chance, which is always there. Uh, we were dining at the European Society of Cardiology, celebrating the gold medals in cardiology. And one of the gold medalists was married to a lady from Rwanda. And during the dinner, she said, we all heard about Aswan. Is there a possibility of recreating Aswan in Rwanda? She was a black Rwandan herself, married to this very eminent cardiologist from Belgium who won the gold medal. So that was oiled the things because things happen which make it possible. obviously the other factors are there, as I mentioned.
And is this is the long-term plan that you've now created a model, and that this can be rolled out in various other underprivileged communities around the world?
Absolutely, that's the idea. Is that a model because professionals, not only doctors but technicians, scientists, administrators, and nurses, everybody, professionals see the pain in the community due to heart disease, which is the biggest killer and cause of a lot of pain and suffering. We see it firsthand. So we really have to get together and do it and create a model which can be um, replicated in different parts of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and who
Mm-hmm.
pays
Mm-hmm.
eventually, etc. It's amazing when people see a successful model which is cost effective, etc., etc., and alleviating suffering. They are convinced. But if you keep writing things which could happen in the future, you really have to go and do it and show that this is possible, and you get
Mm-hmm.
donation
Mm-hmm.
and the principle of the NHS free at entry is fantastic. So this is just
Yeah.
the model.
Yeah. This was such an incredible conversation, and I was honored that Professor Yacoub agreed to be on the show and let me document his story. You can listen to my conversations with Professor Yacoub and Faris Akkad in your podcast app and on YouTube. You'll find a link to both of them in the episode notes. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this new segment, Double Take. I'm Malak Fuad, and this episode was produced by Chirag Desai. I'll be back next week with an exciting new guest from the world of AI, so I hope you can join me then.